6 years ago today, I posted this on Twitter. At the time, I was in the Far East, and I had been made privy to some information that convinced me there would be a recession, manufactured to weaken America's economic hegemony. And shortly after, we all saw what happened. The world has not been the same since those events. And now, I want to share some insights into what the future may hold. Because, make no mistake, there are massive shifts taking place. Systems of governance, systems of finance, and even the very resources society runs on today are changing drastically. And if your long-term plan depends on the current status quo, my friend, it may soon become irrelevant. But here's the thing, change is not new. The world has shifted before, and the rules of money have been written and rewritten many times. And every single time, wealth was transferred. Some families, some dynasties, and some investors kept it, while others, including empires and nations, lost it all. Let's take, for example, the Roman Empire. For centuries, the denarius was the coin of the world, USD. But as Rome expanded and debt mounted, emperors debased the currency. Less silver, more copper back then. Today, print more money. Anyways, trust collapsed. And ordinary citizens, the middle class, working class, lost everything. But Rome's elites shifted their wealth into land and agriculture. So when the empire fell, those families literally became Europe's nobility. Wealth was not destroyed. It moved. The pattern was already emerging. When currency systems collapse, productive assets and real wealth survive. The Roman senators, who owned vast agricultural estates, maintained their power, even as the Western Empire crumbled, and their descendants became the landed aristocracy of medieval Europe. Let's contrast this with the Ottoman Empire. From the 15th to the 17th century, they controlled the crossroads of global trade, the Silk Road, the spice routes, and access between East and West. Their financial power, however, didn't come from being a reserve currency, but from control. Controlling the flow of goods and levying taxes and tariffs on the world's commerce. Big-time middleman. The empire's wealth was built on trade dominance, not minting the world's money. Eventually, Europe found sea routes that bypassed the Ottomans' tolls, so power shifted. The lesson here is that control of trade and flows can be just as powerful as control of currency until innovation renders it obsolete. The Ottoman merchant families who recognized this shift, who moved their wealth into European trading companies, or some of them established operations in the new Atlantic trade routes, they preserved their fortune. But those who remained fixated on the old Silk Road monopolies saw their wealth evaporate. And then in Florence, beautiful Firenze, the Medici family pioneered international banking. Letters of credit replaced bags of gold. So while rivals collapsed in wars and bankruptcies, the Medicis financed popes and kings untouched. They adapted and they endured. But the Medicis understood something very profound. They weren't just lending money, they were building the infrastructure of the new economy. They established banks in London and other cities like Lyon, so when one region faced political upheaval, their wealth was protected. It was safe elsewhere. Centuries later, the Rothschilds mastered cross-border finance. During the rise of the British pound, no conspiracy here, they funded wars, railroads, and empires. Their strength came from flexibility and information, knowing faster than others where power was shifting. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, the OG, his genius was not just positioning his 5 sons famously across Europe's financial capitals. It was understanding that information arbitrage would become the ultimate asset. Quite abstract. So when Nathan Rothschild received news of Wellington's victory at Waterloo ahead of the British government itself, ahead of the crown, he didn't just profit from that single trade. He demonstrated that the family controlled, big word, something more valuable than gold, the flow of information. By the 1820s, the Rothschilds were lending to governments. They were financing infrastructure projects all across continents. They survived so much. They survived the revolutions of 1848, the U.S. Civil War, the two world wars, all because they understood a fundamental principle: diversification. Diversification across both geography and asset classes. That provided the ultimate protection and still does today. And then for a century, the British pound, GBP, was the reserve currency of the world. Then, after two world wars, the balance shifted and ruled Britannia no more. At Bretton Woods in 1944, the US dollar took center stage. Backed by gold, American industry, and oil, the dollar became the foundation of the modern financial system. So beautiful, isn't it? Families like the Rockefellers and the Morgans, they were already invested in energy, steel, and finance. So they rode that wave to cement dynasties that remain powerful to this day. But here is what's crucial. The British elites who saw this transition coming didn't fight it, they positioned for it. The Barings, the Kleinworths, and other London banking houses established strong presences in New York. They didn't fight the tide, they rode it. They understood that fighting the tide of history is futile. Riding it is profitable. Let's fast forward a bit to when Richard Nixon closed the gold window in 1971, the rules changed again. Those who shifted into real assets like commodities, equities, productive businesses, they survived. And those who didn't, they lost. The 1970s created a new class of wealth, the commodity kings. Families like the Hunts, they made and lost fortunes trying to corner silver markets, but others like the Koch family built their wealth by investing in oil refining and chemical infrastructure. The picks and shovels of the new petrodollar economy. And during this time in the 1970s, the petrodollar system was also born. Oil priced in dollars created global demand for US currency and bonds. Investors who understood this dynamic thrived. But again and again, the 1970s had stagflation. And then the Asian financial crisis of 1997, the dot-com crash, and the global crisis of 2008. All of those times we have seen wealth transferred, and every shock has rewritten the rules. The 2008 crisis in particular, which I lived through, demonstrated this pattern, while traditional banking families like the Lehman Brothers collapsed. Others had diversified or positioned differently, not only survived, but prospered. And today, we face the next inflection point. The dollar still dominates, but cracks are visible. BRICS nations are building alternatives. Central banks are stockpiling gold again, and blockchain has proven money can move instantly without borders, banks, or mostly burden. Governments are racing to roll out central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. At Regal Investments, with our drop in the bucket $5 billion in assets under management, we're not just watching these trends, we are positioning for them. We're seeing three simultaneous shifts that, combined, represent the most significant change to the global financial system since Bretton Woods. 6 years ago, I warned of a recession that reshaped the world. Today, I'll say this: the next transformation is already underway. New resources, systems of governance, and financial structures. If your plan depends only on the status quo, it may soon be irrelevant. But if you prepare, if you adapt, there is enormous opportunity. The Medicis positioned for global banking. The Rothschilds built information networks. The Rockefellers invested in industrial infrastructure. Today's equivalent isn't about picking the perfect stock or timing the market perfectly. It's about recognizing that we are living through a once-in-a-century reshuffling of the global financial order. The families and institutions that'll dominate the next century are being established right now. The question isn't whether massive change is coming, it's whether you'll be positioned as a beneficiary or a victim of that change. The world is shifting, things are changing, but that's nothing new. The only question is, when the next chapter of financial history is written, will you be on the right side of the transfer?